and welcome to Hearty Divination and Astrology. In my last video I discussed the asteroid Pallas. In this one we're going to explore Juno. And as I keep saying, there are thousands of asteroids in our asteroid belt within this solar system, and it's located between the orbits of Jupiter and Mars. Juno was discovered by the astronomer Carl Ludwig in 1804, and it's considered to be the third largest of the biggest 20 asteroids that have been discovered so far. And when we think about the year 1804, it was apparently the time when Napoleon had married Josephine on the basis of passion and love. But that relationship soon ended for political reasons, because Josephine was unable to bear an heir. And interestingly enough, in that year, in all the French territories, there was sort of a Bill of Civil Rights introduced in 1804, known as the Code Napoleon. And Chapter 6 stipulated the respected responsibilities and duties of married persons. Whether or not this benefited the rights of women is another question and another argument, but I just thought it would be interesting to note what was taking place that year when Juno was discovered. Named after the goddess in Roman mythology, she is the queen of the gods and goddesses. Her sisters Vesta and Ceres are all goddesses too, but all three daughters were the children of Saturn and Ops. Juno was the wife and sister of Jupiter, and also the mother of Mars, Vulcan, Bellona and Juventus. In fact, she is very similar to Hera, the goddess in Greek mythology, who precedes her. And Hera too was the wife and sister of Zeus. Juno was introduced by the Etruscan kings, and she encapsulates all facets of womanhood. And she has been given various names. For example, as Lashino, she is the guardian for childbirth and married women. And as Sospita, she's an armed deity, kind of a warrior goddess. So there are many similarities between Hera and Juno, but overall the archetype introduces the concept of femininity and receptivity. So as an individual, Juno was the guardian angel of Rome. Hera was also viewed as the protective mother goddess and the patron for childbirth and marriage. So if you want to really understand Juno, you must look to Hera. Both deities hold the peacock as a sacred symbol. So when we think of the peacock feathers, we can only think of this flamboyance and prestige, which basically epitomizes the deities Hera and Juno. Now, I say that they were very similar, but there are some differences. Hera was well known for avenging any heroines beloved by Zeus. She was a very vindictive woman. Unlike Juno, who didn't really pursue the women that had affairs with Jupiter, she was more preoccupied with her role as guardianship for women in Rome. So there is that small difference. But Juno in her need was known for being very vicious and hostile by nature. So when we think about our natal charts now, and we look at the position of Juno, it demonstrates what we expect from a love relationship, a marriage, dating, whatever. And it represents justice, fairness, and equality within relationships. Or it's just a subconscious feeling of how we want to be treated, what are our expectations from our love, you know, whatever's, it is also indicates whatever's in alignment with our heart's desires in terms of relationships. So even though this may not be at the forefront of your mind, it certainly will be there subconsciously. But one of the main differences with Juno from Hera is that Juno was often associated with the moon goddess. And as I said, the archetype is receptive feminine energy. So she was associated particularly with the full moon, which is symbolic of a woman carrying a child, you know, at the full stages of their gestation. So there is that little bit of difference there. But what I'm going to do now is go into more detail about the deities, particularly Juno, Hera, and Isis, who is the older Egyptian example of the same concept, along with some other Egyptian deities that have been incorporated within the Juno archetype concept. So let's begin. Now, returning back to mythology, we have outlined the similarities between Juno and Hera, and even if we see their statues or monuments, they look almost identical, often named Juno or Hera interchangeably. The main distinction, as I said earlier, is that Juno bears another title, Moon Goddess. But when we go further back to the times of antiquity, in ancient Egypt or Kemet, there is not a queen of the gods or goddesses as such, but the ideology of the power couple underlying Juno, Jupiter, Hera and Zeus echoes the relationship between Set, who you may know as Isis, and Asar, who you know as Osiris. They are known in the Egyptian pantheon, known as the Anunian theology, Tree of Life. Unlike the unharmonious relationships with both the Greek and Roman deities, which is Juno and Hera respectively, then we come to understand that a Set and a Star have a divine union based on love, reciprocity, balance, and justice. For example, when Set cuts the Star's body into 14 pieces, or Set gathered his disembodied parts and had him reincarnated, she was even more fiercely protective of Heru, who you know as Horus, her son. And Set also was the wife and sister and soulmate of Asar. Set represented maternal devotion, fidelity, and tenderness. She is the female principle of nature in all of us, regardless of whether you're a man or a woman. And we all have to be receptive at some time, which is a feminine aspect of our nature, to receive. And Set's depiction with the seat or throne upon her head represents the principle of legitimacy and authority to the actual physical throne. You see, in those times they had matrilineal rulership, but not over all the other gods and goddesses. It's more of a pantheon, a group of gods that come together and make a whole. You see, Juno as the Shino mirrors both the Egyptian deities Taweret and Bes. Taweret is a hippopotamus with drooping breasts, lion paws, and a crocodile's tail. In human terms, Taweret is the patroness of women in pregnancy, childbirth, and afterbirth. And then we have Bes, the little unattractive dwarf, but he has tremendous strength. Besides other extraordinary powers, Bes is also associated with childbirth, particularly a companion for women during child labour. So now we see, or have highlighted, the sameness between Juno and Set. Each are prominent female figures, symbolizing all the virtues of femininity such as motherhood, marriage, and progeny. Juno shares an emblematic ideas with Taweret and Bes with respect to childbirth and the safeguarding in women in general. I mean, no matter how we compare and contrast Juno, Hera, Set, Taweret, and Bes, they are recurring themes, emblems, and narratives that are familiar and impossible to ignore. After outlining the factors within all the deities, I'm now going to discuss Juno as a placement in the water signs, and that will be Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. So let's begin with Cancer. So if we have Juno in Cancer in the first house, you may be motivated, relationships motivate you, they want to make you live, without companionship, there's a loss of identity almost. And both the men and the women with this placement consider themselves relationship or marriage material, although many of you are cohabiting or going steady at least. So if you have this placement, it's definitely someone that's going to demand or need or require some level of stability. And Cancer as a cardinal water is likely to propose commitment first and maybe, over enthusiastic, since the natural ruler of the first house is Aries, which is also cardinal fire. So you could imagine the impulsiveness there and the emotion behind it. And these are the type of people who seem keen to meet your family, friends or co-workers despite only knowing them for a few weeks. You know, it's the depths of the passion that hits like the onset of a, fireworks. It's what you call eager beavers, but this enthusiasm doesn't necessarily translate as the ultimate love, mind you. Depending on where Mars and the Moon are placed in the natal chart, it can make all the difference. If Juno is poorly aspected, then moodiness could be a concern, especially when the relationship has been casual for some time. And there is some sort of anticipation towards something more serious, a more serious connection. And Juno in Cancer in the third house requires you to look at your individual circumstances and compare it with your partners when considering relationships. It's all right, falling head over heels in love, but we have to look at these practicalities. Are there other factors to contemplate, such as children, finances, proximity, and whether you are actually the right person for them, regardless of the impression you have given. As this wonderful suitor or suitress, And if you have Juno in Cancer in the second house, the house of money, relationships and marriage are a priority. It's about what you value. In fact, a loving relationship is a boost to your self-esteem and self-worth. And this is an emotion that could be a fixation for better or worse, It's going to be a consistent sort of vibe. So nevertheless, the capacity to give love appears to be almost endless. In terms of the consistency, material comforts and the sense of responsibility, you are determined to acquire and maintain an amicable relations with your loved one. And money is handled with great care. However, spending sprees to satisfy sensual needs will occur from time to time. But this can range from exotic foods to extravagant items. The tendency to be overprotective to the point of possessiveness is a problem for some lovers with this placement. Because here you have Taurus, who's the natural placement for the second house, the natural zodiac sign for the second house. And then you have Cancer in combination. So you could imagine how this obsession could be. And this is typical of those with Juno in Cancer in the second house. For both men and the women, they are nurturing, and any attempt to curtail this behavior is going to be futile. It's all about being over concerned. And if Juno is negatively expressed due to squares, oppositions, or other unfavorable configurations, then the values for finding a suitable mate are skewed in some way. For example, looks, wealth, and popularity may overshadow more important qualities such as integrity, love, and understanding. It's the one that's it's another example of unrequited love here. But now when we look at the fourth house, with Juno in Cancer in the fourth house, and obviously this is the natural zodiac sign for the fourth house. And marriage and children is a tradition of institution instilled by your parents. So maybe, you come from a family background where, there's probably pressures around being married, or most of your siblings are married, and the whole family is expecting you to be married too. And if you happen to be a childless for whatever reason, this could play havoc with your conscience, especially if it's by personal choice. So if you've got this placement and you're someone that's decided that you don't want children, this may not sit comfortably with you, even though you've made that conscious decision not to. But as we see, You are likely to be strongly maternal and or paternal, building a fortress which surrounds those of you love, and this is extended to partners or spouse. So this placement is more leaning towards those very maternal or paternal individuals. And, you know, being emphatic and emotionally responsive are traits which make, you know, admirable partners. You know, if your moon is in Cancer also, along with Juno, then emotional neglect or abuse is likely either during childhood or living with, you know, parents or guardians. If not, you were a witness to domestic violence between parents. However, if your moon is placed in Capricorn with Juno in the 4th house in Cancer, then there's going to be this like emotional resilience and self-reliance, you know. And it's going to be of great help to you if you're subjected to that sort of experience. But the more advanced souls are able to tap into Neptune, which is the esoteric ruler of Cancer. And, you know, you'll be able to rise above the situation by creating a reality within your own imagination to escape. So there are ways out with this placement. But overall, Juno is said to be exalted in Cancer. But it doesn't mean that you could experience it on the other side of the polarity if other planetary influences don't suit. And this is because you have the ability to see the many aspects of an issue and view the concern from a wider and higher perspective, not to take negative experiences too personally. So you're able to, you know, block out all forms of negativity, all types of disappointment. You know, it's that sort of attitude of accept the things that you cannot change, but you can change your way you look at it, you know. And, you know, you're able to sort of redirect your thoughts in a way, you know, in a disciplined way. And this is facilitated by Saturn, you know, who's both the esoteric and esoteric of the 10th house. So if you have got your moon in Capricorn and you happen to have Juno in the 4th house in Cancer, then that cardinal earthly moon will pull you through. Juno in Cancer in the 7th house, and Cancer's home. Oh wow, if you have Juno in Cancer in the 7th house, it's like love, relationships, marriage are sanctified. I mean, although your youthful years you will probably spent yearning for something less permanent, as the time draws near for you to mature, you know, some sort of steadfast security is really wanting, then marriage and commitment all of a sudden becomes a holy grail. You know, fidelity for sure is the moral here. And these moralistic ideas about love and companionship are from Libra's standard of judgment. And the emotional investment is Cancer's possession. So, you know, you've got Libra here, the perfectionist, and Cancer who's, you know, thinks with the deepest of emotions in the 7th house. So, you know, this is someone that could be taken advantage of. But those who are more evolved are attuned to wherever Uranus is located in the birth chart. Because Uranus is this esoteric ruler for Libra, which is at home in the 7th house. But if Uranus happens to be in Aquarius or Sagittarius, then the experience could be quite similar in that relationships are not so plain sailing, but still resolute, still strong. But there's going to be, you know, problems from time to time, like most relationships. But indecisions of not knowing who to choose, or trials and error with incompatibility are tolerated. So you're going to be the sort of person that's going to be very realistic. You know, you're not going to want to call it quits after the first argument, you know. Since you are, you know, you're more open-minded and appreciative of individuality, and aware love is not an expectation, but rather an unfolding process that comes to fruition. So if Juno is afflicted by other planetary positions, then attachments to previous love and confusion about emotional needs can be an issue. And if you have Juno in Cancer in the 10th house, you know, this is a conscientious lover, spouse, or who is faithful in terms of responsibility. You know, marriage and commitment is a duty, you know, sort of respectable and customary. So you are likely to be raised in a nuclear family setting or surrounded by such families, or you measure personal love relationships on the role models nearby. And there is a preference for older partners. I mean, knowledge and wisdom are very appealing. You know, maturity is surety for you, and it's like a great deal of capacity for emotional control. With Cancer in the 10th house of Capricorn, so this is someone who knows how to feel, but feel with discipline, feel with structure, feel with order. It's not someone that's going to fall into love. It's someone that's going to stand up in love. And, you know, as a parent, you will guide your offspring in what is deemed the right direction. And discipline is carried out with composure. You know, you're not just going to grab the belt and lose it. You know, you're a parent of reasoning. Firm, but understanding. Parent decides that, you know, like for example, a parent decides on their children's choice of career or profession. It could be that kind of situation. But if this parenting style doesn't resemble your particular approach, then it could be being received from your parents. So with this placement too, you are going to get you know, parents who are quite authoritarian, or if it's not your parents, then maybe you will be. But if Juno is negatively expressed here due to discordant elements like oppositions or hard semi-squares or anything like that, then there's going to be a lack of maternal figure. Then low self-esteem, difficulties with emotional freedom or expression is a concern. And relationships are a heavy burden. So you may meet a lifetime partner through work, or you are attracted to partners that share your ambitions and goals. So these are some of the characteristics of what your love, relationship or marriage could be if you have Juno in Cancer in the 10th house. So if you are interested in me reading the chart for you, please take note of my details at the end of the video. So let's look at Juno in Scorpio. If you have Juno in Scorpio in the 1st house, the world will only see a tiny portion of who you truly are, and certain parts of your personality are best kept hidden. Not that there's anything to hide, or maybe it's just that safety is found in being unknown. You sort of feel protected and empowered by this. So however, it's an imperative that you discover the innermost depths of your loved one. How else can you gain knowledge and therefore power which inevitably leads to control. But this is not necessarily control in a, what could we say, in a disagreeable way. But it's more to do with, you know, self-protection, if anything. And of course, not everyone with this placement wants to dominate, but at least being at an advantage gives you some leverage. It's more to do with self-preservation, if anything. So a prospective partner will be drawn by your magnetism and passion, and this will be subconsciously. It's as if not your physicality that pulls them, then it's your sense of style and taste, or both. Obviously, there is much more than meets the eye, you know. You can't tell a book by its cover. And, you know, depending on where Mars and Venus are situated in your natal chart, then the companion sort must be strong enough to handle your highly sexed demeanor, which can be extremely intense but attractive for those who are in acceptance of it. So the right love is impactful enough to influence the change in your persona if you really want to impress someone or ensure a relationship stands or has longevity. And if you have Juno in the second house in Scorpio, then there's going to be some very fixed values about relationships. I mean, you will be able to, draw partners effortlessly. So, you'll be drawing them in, attracting them. And the area of love is an essential part of life, as important as the air you breathe. And love could be based on romantic idealism, with genuine affection, or a means of survival on the premise of materialism. And if Juno is positively expressed, this makes for an intense, oh gosh, I don't know what other word to use apart from intense. I know this makes for an in-depth relationship. But the emotions are, they're productive and enhance the connection between two people. The most intimate liaison you could ever have. So, this is heavy, real heavy. And I would consider it a type of soulmate connection, but yeah. And Juno in this house in the Scorpio will be largely experienced according to where Pluto is placed in your birth chart. Because Pluto is the co-ruler of Scorpio, so the effects tend to be generational, since Pluto spends around 20 years in each zodiac sign. So if your Pluto is in Leo, so you're talking about someone that was born between 1972 and 1984, then your desire for strong ties and commitment and marriage will still be respected, and valued, but not as wanting. Since individual self-direction, which is outside, what other people think, what your mother thinks, or what the social expectation is. It's an era in the 70s when the nuclear family began to fall apart in Western society especially. So, yeah, marriage was valued, but it wasn't considered as compulsory as like the decade before in the 60s. So whereas Pluto in Virgo in 1957 to 1972 is a generation that had to juggle two conflicting ideologies. I mean, those times, marriage, which was free love versus conventional attitudes to marriage, the invention of birth control radically changed dating and people's sex lives. So it brought much change, and family planning gave women more so-called liberty. So Juno as an archetype symbolizes all the virtues of femininity, receptive by nature, and the ultimate nurturer. So your notions on commitment and marriage and love are perceived as traditional to some, or and to some others it's outdated. So depending on where your Pluto is, the way that you will value marriage or your approach to marriage and commitment makes all the difference if you have Juno in the second house in Scorpio. So if you were born like later with Pluto in Sagittarius, for instance, sort of from 1995 to 2008, then more humanitarian ideas are at the forefront. Probably even unworkable ideas about relationships and marriage are addressed and even transformed. So there's many of you who are born in that era that probably want to do away with certain ideas about love, marriage and connections, and many of you are sticking two fingers up at traditional marriage. So people with this placement, especially with Pluto in Sagittarius, are going to be adamant about men sharing domestic duties. Men may insist on even responsibility of paying bills. Women are making proposals to men. Then we've got same-sex marriages. So all these things are now changing, especially for those of you that were born with Pluto in Sagittarius. And then here Juno desires to find fairness and equality with relationships, along with intimacy, tenderness and endearment. So however, this sentiment is asking for quite a lot. It's a tall order. But the love lesson to be learned from this placement during this lifetime depends on Pluto's relations with the North and South Node. So we also have to take that into consideration when we're reading this Juno placement in any of the more outer planets. And as we're reading Scorpio, Pluto is the outer planet. And Juno in Scorpio in the 6th house is where your relationship or commitment becomes the primary focus for improvement. I mean, you or your partner or spouse may require a great deal of work. Hard work, those type of relationships, and for the relationship to be worthwhile and rewarding. These are the sort of people that form relationships with victims, people who have had their hearts broken many times, people who have experienced trauma, abuse, or it could literally mean that you're caring for your spouse at a relatively young age. Maybe your spouse has had an injury or suffering with some sort of condition and you become their carer. So this is what could happen with Juno in Scorpio in the 6th house. This you're like calling for a partner that, with this placement, you're calling for a partner that inspires you, aspires to good health at least, and living. So aspires to good health and living, and to be an overall inspiration to their mind, body and soul. So I think you're looking for a saviour here when you have Juno in Scorpio in Virgo. I mean, as a parent, you'll probably dote over your children. Like a minor cut or rash or fever will be treated as though it was an emergency. You know what I mean? And then generally there is a tendency towards being an accurate diagnostic for more symptoms. You know, those without children are likely to have a pet that is given similar treatment, you know. So it's not always about children. Childbirth and mothering doesn't necessarily have to be, you have to physically have biological children. You may be mothering other people's children, you may be mothering a pet, you may be even mothering your own partner. The energy is there regardless. So, you know, this level of dedication is a form of safekeeping. You know, everyone experiences ups and downs in their relationships after all. And if you have Juno in Scorpio in the 6th house, it's like a broken commitment due to betrayal, deceit, or any other dishonor can be forgiven and followed by reconciliation if Pluto is aspecting the North Node in an agreeable way. So in fact, challenges within the relationship provide opportunities for renewal, growth and empowerment. So that's a very, you know, so very encouraging, isn't it? And Mercury has the natural ruler of the 6th house and home to Virgo, seeks to find solutions and, you know, and therefore perfection. I suppose there's no harm in that, you know. So what we think about Juno in the 8th house now, Juno in the 8th house of Scorpio, in Scorpio. So, you know, obviously at home here, you might be someone that seeks love and affection to transform themselves. It sounds crazy, I know, but this could mean marrying to a wealthy family, which improves financial prospects considerably, as I mentioned in the 2nd house. So it's very similar in that way. You remember Scorpio is directly opposite Taurus. And not that you are solely an opportunist. You know, support and resources from a partner enables you to act in favor of a cause or passion. You know, maybe you want to invest in an alternative education like meditation classes for children, or start up a grassroots football team or football club for to engage young people. So it's not necessarily for selfish purposes. It's about sharing resources and empowering people. But you may want your spouse to be a participant in this. And oh yeah, I mean, Juno is in the midst of powerful emotions here in Scorpio. You know, unlike the sensitivity that we get with Cancer, the intensity is ravenous and often difficult to what could I say, manage. Your expectations within a relationship may appear delusional to most. I mean, since the feeling stemming from your soul is the main drive, even you are sometimes perplexed by it. You don't know where it's coming from, but it's certainly there. And for example, you insist on your significant other to adopt another religious faith, or to try to radicalize their philosophical views or coerce them into changing their lifestyle dramatically, you know. So, you know, for you, relationships and marriage go through phases. For love to last the test of time, there must be a renewal from time to time. And that's how you see it. And whether this is a reality or not, only a true soulmate can undergo such a journey or process. You know, although that, you know, genuine love exists, you know, devotion and loyalty, it is rather demanding to the point it can seem like persecution rather than love. And if you have children, they will perceive your parenting to be, you know, kind of high-handed. They think twice before consulting you about any problem anyway. And ironically, Juno in Scorpio is characteristic of being receptive, nurturing and protective. However, this is pursued in the most persistent and you could almost say horrendous ways. That it becomes abusive in nature, and it's kind of paradoxical, really. And, you know, remember the moon is at its fall in Scorpio. And in Rome, the moon is an emblem of Juno. Whether this idea bears any credibility, I mean, it's up for some speculation, isn't it? Because I don't think Juno's very happy in Scorpio, but certainly passionate. And Juno in Scorpio influences people to get, you know, well, it influences people to elope because they're running away to break ties with their past or community. So with Juno in Scorpio, you may just get married because you want to get away from your extended family, or you just want to get away from the area where you live, or you just want to start a new life, you know, that sort of scenario. And if you have this placement, managing a strong libido is likely, so a large family is possible. You could have many children, and you may have pondered about the benefits of polygamy or polyandry, should I say, even though it's outside the remit of your culture and against the law in your country. I mean, this is what Juno in Scorpio in the 8th house can bring. And Juno in Scorpio is tricky. I know, if it's favourably expressed, it is likely to be a relationship of a lifetime. You know, if it's favourably expressed, it's a relationship of a lifetime. You know, once you're prepared to live that Scorpion fantasy. But any, you know, discordant energies, then it's going to be a problem. And if you have Juno in Scorpio in the 11th house, you're inclined to find love and marriage within a group that shares your ideals and, you know, like-minded folk, really. And this could be an interest group such as the conservation of the wild, mental health awareness, or neighbourhood support services. I mean, I'm just running off some examples. Any groups. It could be even a religious group, but put it this way, you're attracted to someone with commonalities relating to kinship, identity, or similar motives and goals. You know, it's one of those matchmaking moments. So other examples for this placement is that, you know, you could be married within a community which frowns heavily on divorce. It is forbidden, maybe, or, you know, so all efforts are made to keep your marriage and matrimonial harmony, should I say, going. And just to remind you that Juno is about sustenance, preservation and protection, you know, a mothering type quality. So the last thing you want to happen is suffer being ostracized by your community because of a failed marriage. You know, this is a reality for some people. And other experiences are being the fiancé or fiance or spouse or lover to someone that is fanatical towards their social life, compromising quiet evenings and lonesome strolls in nature as a routine is part of the package, unfortunately, you know. And in addition, if the planet Uranus brings exciting energies alongside Juno in the 11th house, then love is sought within social groups that your parents wouldn't approve of, you know, or your offspring is dating with children from, you know, or your offspring, if dating with children from previous relationship. You know, this is one of those situations where, you know, you choose an alternative lifestyle in some way or form. And this could be sexuality, political beliefs, anything. It might even just be the way you dress that people strongly disapprove of. So if you want me to read your chart, do not hesitate to either email me or you can DM me. I'll be there and waiting. So I have Pisces now. Let's have a look at Juno in Pisces. If you have Juno in Pisces in the first house, then you require a relationship full of charm, especially during the earlier stages. Otherwise, the connection will not happen in the first place. Akin to Scorpio, emotions run deep and are highly sensitive, but far more gentle than the Scorpion. You know, the type of partnership and commitment or marriage you visualize can be manifested in reality. So this is someone that can conjure her ideal man or woman into her life, you know. And, you know, not that you're particularly fussy or hard to please. It's just that the ideal that you dwell on is not a fantasy, but must become a reality. So your modest and subtle persona is non-threatening. So therefore you're approachable and you're accommodating. And the look in your eyes captivates those who are able to see what you are truly about. I mean, this placement hopes on a relationship that will be a safe haven from the harsh outside world. Mutual respect, love and trust is a foundation when Venus is placed in Pisces itself, Taurus, Cancer or Libra. But both men and women with Juno in Pisces in the first house are romantics. And the men are likely to appropriate old-fashioned chivalry. Or did I pronounce that right? Chivalry, yeah. And the women enchanting and polite. So of course, if Venus is placed in somewhere less dignified, then the yin energy we get from Juno are not so forthcoming. So there won't be this femininity, this flowing grace. It'll be something quite different if Venus is placed in somewhere that's less dignified, which makes sense because, as I said earlier, Venus is exalted in Pisces. And if Juno is in the second house in Pisces, then love can be quite consuming. Since the natural ruler of Venus is exalted in Pisces, as I said, and with Jupiter as Pisces' co-ruler alongside Neptune, then love is bountiful, unconditional and ideal. Yeah, and the only ideal is a utopia. You know, because Neptune as the co-ruler of Pisces and Jupiter, and then you've got that exaltation in Venus in the second house. It's whoo, yeah. And like the other water signs, Cancer and Scorpio's companionship is, what can I say, revered. Juno represents the female principle, as we said, and all that concerns women. Even if you are a man, then it's the feminine side of your nature. And as a woman, it's still your feminine side of your nature. So whether you are cohabiting, engaged or married, the relationship is center stage in your life. You know, the love of a lifetime. Definitely the love of a lifetime. And if you think of Romeo and Juliet, Denzel and Paulette Washington, Adam and Eve, do you see where I'm coming from? Although money is important for both of you, the real wealth lies in the true love you have for each other. And Juno exemplifies not only care and nurturing, but adulation also. So if they are a disagreeable aspects of Juno, then it's possible to have a spouse, lover, or even a mother who becomes a prodigal. Yeah, a prodigal. Basically, runs away from home to live a life of pleasure, wasting money, but later regrets this and wanted to return home broke. I mean, particularly difficult aspects between Venus and Jupiter can translate as relationships that are thwarted with selfishness and excessive emotional demands. So it is a catch-20. It's a serious situation. If it goes well, then it's great. But if there's problems here, then it's not very nice. So with Juno in Pisces in the 3rd house, as you already know, it's the house of communication, and Juno has been said to be exalted in Gemini. I mean, that's debatable, but I should imagine because it's the house of communication, that's the reason. We all know that communication is key to a promising relationship. But with this placement, it can mean love and intellectual compatibility. So, sorry to say, but love and intellectual compatibility go hand in hand here. If you are in love with someone, then you will instill that appreciation of knowledge and broadening their horizons. So, even if you meet someone who's not as smart as yourself, or maybe a bit dim in certain ways, then you'll have a way of brightening that light. And this is imposed in the name of love, and it's the energy of Juno here. So those of you who are more evolved souls will sort of function on the ascending octave of Venus, which is Gemini's esoteric ruler. And so the language of love aims to impart knowledge, understanding and wisdom. Because Neptune allows you to stand in someone else's shoes. It's that intuitive empath sort of insight into other people's feelings. And this constitutes healthy relations, especially along with communications of Mercury as well. So this is a placement for those people who know how to make relationships work, basically, and they will put the work in, although the work is effortless for those with this placement. If Mercury or Neptune, Pisces as co-ruler bring conflicting energies in relation to Juno, then the expectations regarding the relationship are met with a disappointment, or you just keep choosing the wrong partner due to bad judgment, and it's caused by over enthusiasm. It's basically viewing potential love with rose-colored glasses and making a spectacle of yourself. So if you have children with this placement, then not only will you guide them with wisdom, but you'll also realize that parenthood is a sound education for yourself. So it's through having children with this placement that you come to learn more about yourself and be more understanding of other people as well. If you have Juno in Pisces in the 9th house, Yeah, this is someone searching for the pleasures and disappointments through personal experience. So, if anything, marriage brings you knowledge through experience. And this ninth house is, it's directly opposite the third house, which is ruled by Mercury. So, the house of communication. So, this relation between two people is definitely a learning experience and an expansion of mind. You probably marry someone from another culture, which is a stark contrast to your own. And, various culture shocks may wake you up. And therefore, viewing and living life from different perspectives opens up a new reality for you. And the relationship definitely needs more input, doesn't it? I mean, far more work and patience and compromise than usual. And Juno and Jupiter, which is the natural ruler of this house, inspires you to do so wholeheartedly. So you're someone that's got the drive to make such relationships work, because you have the optimism, and it doesn't matter that the one you love can only communicate in a foreign language, or lives at the other side of the world, or follows a religious faith alien to what you believe. The receptivity of Juno and the optimism of Sagittarius and the wishful thinking of Pisces makes all things possible. So you may adopt a new religious faith because it meets the approval of your partner, or you leave behind religion altogether to pursue a spiritual way of life, but still to please loved ones. And it's the sort of placement where an individual discovers knowledge of self through love and marital relationships. You're learning yourself through someone else, your spouse, your partner, your love. And depending on how Juno is expressed in the ninth house, the presence of Juno can bring an awareness which changes your philosophical views on marriage by recognizing your service for something greater than yourself. I mean, you sacrifice family life to fulfill a humanitarian cause or travel the world. You marry someone you met in college or university, or you encourage a partner to acquire higher learning or something like that. But Juno in the ninth house can play out in various ways. But whatever kind of relationship you may experience with having Juno in Pisces in the ninth house, it's certainly going to be an education for you. So, yeah. And if we have Juno in Pisces in the 12th house, you are a doting partner, a devoted partner. A lover or a spouse that is capable of unconditional love. As far as you're concerned, literally speaking, my partner and I are one, and therefore inseparable. And even if this is not a conscious decision, it is definitely subconscious. If this sentiment is reciprocal, your loved one feels the same, then it's a divine union. If such an approach to love is not mutual, then I am afraid you are open to being taken for granted. The sort of men and women that try to rehabilitate their partners from substance misuse. You know what I mean? It's those kind of, it's very, oh bless. So it kind of, you continue with forgiving infidelity regardless of emotional and financial abuse. It kind of reminds me of the Three Swords in reversed in the tarot deck, that sort of situation. Misfortune of this kind is often ancestral, because remember the 12th house is the house of ancestors. So maybe there's a you know, a repeated pattern taken here. So we must take note of the north and south nodes position in relation to Neptune. I mean, moving beyond limited beliefs that have been set by family members, past and present. You know, this is the time to reclaim your power with this placement. So it could be ancestral sort of cycles taking place here with regards to relationships within the family, and this house also involves altruistic service. So you could be foster parents to orphan children, or you're a surrogate mother. You know, you may find surrogate mothers with this placement too, or you lost biological children due to being an incompetent parent because of other life events. So this is in the world. But more often than not, people with Juno in Pisces are phenomenal parents that would undergo anything for the sake of their offspring. You know, this is quite a dramatic placement for Juno in the 12th house in Pisces. But overall, I think it can be quite an exhilarating experience. So if you're interested in me reading your birth chart, just DM me and I will get back to you. And thank you for listening. I hope you gained insight. Goodbye.